So what I want to cover today for our mechanical one is I said before that I was going to show how we could animate some of these features. In case you decided my still looks cool, I want to animate it and actually move it around as it's going. So I'm going to go to my perspective view and I'll show you just a simple way to animate, let's say, a camera moving around. Okay, even if you didn't animate the entire thing, but you still wanted to animate a camera kind of spinning around to show all sides of your things, that's another viable option. So anytime you do a platform animation, a turntable, you want to have obviously a turntable. So there's my turntable. I'm going to make sure I have enough divisions. For whatever reason, people like skimp on this. They spend 12 hours rendering it out, and the platform looks disgusting. Everything else looks cool, but the platform looks disgusting. I'm going to add a bevel to this. Come on. And there, and there. That's good. And I'll even delete the bottom face. And I'll make sure I delete all the bottom face. What is that? Oops. And then a 3. All right, so there's my platform. Okay. Now I'm going to bring my character into this one just so I can put them together. I'm going to go to Import. Mechanical scenes, and I believe it's Mech 3 is my latest one. Yes. There he is. So this is how I had it set up before, where I had this earth ground plane. I can delete that because I don't need that. I still need my HDR. Now I want to position him on top of this platform. So I'm going to grab everything inside my scene, all the groups, everything here, group this together. Oops, I didn't want the platform. That was the one thing I didn't want. Group that together. And then I can scale this down and then just position him. Now, had I grabbed everything, just marqueed it and scaled it, everything has its own pivot, so it would actually like scale things separately, okay? Just to show you, if I just grabbed everything and scaled it, it would do that, and that's not what we want. Cool, so that looks pretty good right there. If I did want to put a plane in here for the ground, I could still do that. Something to pay attention to, always make sure that your stuff that's supposed to be hitting the ground is actually hitting the ground. So like this is actually coming through slightly, and his legs here I think are also, if I zoom inside this, oops, maybe not. Group. Oh, there they are. Right there, they can kind of come in right there. So he is actually poking through just a little bit. All right, so now I want to create a 360 of this. I'm going to click the platform. I'm going to set up my view, like how do I want this thing to start? Let's say like that. It's cool. And I'm going to go to my animation. I'm going to go to visualize, and I'm going to go to create turntable. What this is going to do is it's going to duplicate my camera in this exact position and do a 360 with the camera. Okay, I choose only 2 options. Do I want, or how many frames do I want, and then which direction do I want it to go in? So I'm going to do 240. Typically that's a good amount of frames to do. If it's too slow, you can speed it up. But if I had not enough frames, there's nothing I can do to really slow it down. And then I'll go counterclockwise. I think that's the way I want to go. And then I'm going to hit turntable. There we go. And then now I hit play, and then we'll see. There we go. Now, whichever item I selected, that's the item it's spinning around. So had I chosen anything else in my scene, that's what would be rotating around my character. So I need to make sure, obviously, I need to make sure I have 240 frames. So I can go all the way around. 240. There we go. I also need to make sure my character is centered on the platform, because if he is not centered, like this, and I put him, let's say, here, then this is going to look weird. He's going to look like he's going away from the camera and then towards the camera, and that obviously doesn't look good at all. I actually miraculously got him pretty close to the center. If you kind of like line it up on your screen, the center of his body should stay centered on the screen the whole time. It looks like he is doing a pretty good job. Maybe a smidge, but that's good. Cool. The other thing I want to do is I want to fix the rotation. So in this case, it's doing an easy ease. So at the start of the animation, it's kind of going slow and then picking up speed. And at the end of the animation, it's like tapering off and then slowing down and stopping. The reason we don't want that is when I take this and I throw it into a demo reel, I want to have 100% control over what it looks like. Here, this feels like a single piece. It starts here and stops here. If I change how the keyframes are interpolating, I can cut anywhere I want and it'll feel like its own thing. I could loop this 25 times and it'll just feel like it's all part of that same animation. Where here it feels like there's a definite stopping and starting point. Okay? So I'm going to go over here to my group 41. This is where it created that turntable camera. And I'm just going to call this turntable group so I don't get confused. And I'm going to go to the graph editor under animation editor. And you can see here that's slowing down, speeding up, and then slowing down. I'm just going to highlight it and click linear. And now it's just straight. And so now I could loop this thing 1,000 times and you would never really be able to tell where the stop and start is. Obviously it's the same point, but you don't know where I started it or where I stopped it. Okay, because it's going to be the same speed all the way around. Cool. And then when this goes into a demo reel, we don't have any weird stopping parts. We can control the speed in After Effects. We can speed it up where we want. We can slow it down where we want. We don't have to worry about any of that. Cool. All right, so if that's what I was doing, rendering this out, then I would go to my render settings. I would change my name here. I would say Sarcona Mech. Still do them as EXRs. I would still merge all my stuff together. And then I would do this as a name.number.extension. So just like Cinema, whenever you rendered a sequence out of Cinema, you had to choose name.number.extension. And then down here I would pick my frame range, so 1 to 240. I would pick which camera, so I'm going to make sure turntable is chosen, and that's it. I would pick my resolution. If you do an animation as a secondary thing, don't do it at 1920 by 1080. It'll take roughly 4 times as long to render out from 960 by 540. Okay. If you're going to do an animation, I would recommend at least 1280 by 720. But if you want to test it out first, then you can do 960 or lower. And then the rest of the settings are the same. Okay, there's no other setting difference here. None of these are currently set up because I imported my Mech just to show that when you import something, it doesn't bring everything with you. So I actually should have imported the platform into the other one, but that doesn't matter. And then I would go to rendering, go to render, and say render sequence option box, and then make sure that turntable is picked, and then I would say render sequence. And what this does is it opens up my render view, renders that frame, and then saves it out. Opens up the render view, renders a frame, saves it out. And it just does that for all 240 frames. If you need to stop it, you just hit the escape key, and then when it feels like it, it will actually stop the rendering. There it goes. Okay, so then that will go into my folder. All right, so if you want to do at least a turntable, that's how you could do at least a turntable. If you wanted to animate some of the parts to the character, I'm just going to jump onto my camera. And I'm going to go and set up some of these to be rigged to be animated. Now, I'm not going to go through a full-blown rigging demo. That's what the animation class is for. This character will actually be their rigging assignment. So they'll be rigging this guy. But for this class, just to show you how I could quickly rig this to get some controls, what I'm going to do is look at what items are going to move with what. I'm also going to go to use default material so I can see this better. Okay, so this item here would be like this piece. Okay, these things inside here would just move with that. That's good. And then up here, I think that would move with that. Okay, so I'm going to grab all of these pieces here, and I'm just going to group them together. So I just hit Control-G to group all those pieces together. And now I need to move the pivot for this, because now it's way over here. I need to move it to where it will be pivoting from. So I'm going to hold down D, hold down V, and I'm just going to middle click and drag right here to snap the pivot right to that center spot. If I didn't have that, sometimes I'll drop in a cylinder, line it up, and then I'll have something to snap to. Or you can add a division there, and that would work too. D is for the pivot, and then V is for snapping to point. Okay, now this direction doesn't matter where it is, it's just the other direction it will matter. Okay, so there we go. So now as I rotate this, you can see how that whole arm is able to then rotate. Okay, so now I'm going to label this, and this is going to be his left, not my left, his left forearm. It helps to label things that, you know, if I called it something mechanical, then we may not know what it is. Now for the other arm, we're going to take this, and I'm going to, let's see, that's a sphere. So I'm going to group those as well, and I'll call this left bicep. And then I'm going to move the pivot into this spot. Okay, now this is a sphere, so it's going to rotate all around, so it has to be at the center of that sphere. So I'm going to do my DV, drag this to the pole of the sphere, and then I'm going to switch to like a side-ish view here. And what I'm looking for is the biggest ring around that circle. That should be the center of the sphere. So right here, that's the biggest one. All I want to do is drag it straight down so it's lined up with it. So I'm going to use DV again. Oops. Need to zoom out a smidge. DV again, and I'm just going to drag the arrow this time to just move that arrow straight down. Okay, that looks like it's lined up with that one. And so now if I were to rotate it, you'll see how we then are able to rotate just that one piece. As you rotate any of these things, like if it's a orbital thing like that, only move it in 2 directions total. I would not grab this and go like this, like, stop it, like that, because it gives you crazy numbers here and they don't animate correctly, okay? So if I wanted to move him, I would go like this, and then I would go like that. And that doesn't give me crazy numbers. The X didn't get touched because I didn't touch the X. All right, so now I need to connect these two things. I need to be able to take the bicep area and the forearm area and move them together just like our arms would move. So I'm going to go into my big group here. Here is left bicep, here is left forearm. All I'm going to do is just middle drag left forearm into left bicep. So now when I click on left bicep, I can move this and that whole arm will move. Then I can open this up, grab left forearm, and then move that. Okay? Now, if you're in the animation class, you can already kind of see where some of these things can be connected, because on this thing here, we wouldn't ever rotate that like this. So I could go over here and lock these things, lock, so that I can't accidentally rotate it in the wrong direction. Same thing here, I wouldn't ever do this, so I could lock that item. So now I only can do this. Okay? Now, obviously I'm missing this part here. This is something that is not connected to either piece of this. This is going to be a bit more of a setup, okay? This is the hydraulic, so the idea here is that as this goes this way, that this plate would follow it and this arm would go and direct itself towards that. So that piece would be kind of like a dynamic piece that would move around with it, okay? So this part here is pretty straightforward. Parenting, grouping, joining things together. This one might be a little bit more confusing, but again, if you wanted it, then this is the best way to do that. So I'm going to take all of these pieces here. These pieces are locked into this arm. Those are not going anywhere. I'm going to group them. I'm going to call them hydraulic, left hydraulic forearm bits. There we go. And then I'm going to control click left forearm, and I'm going to hit P. Now that is the same thing as middle dragging, except it just does it automatically. I parented it from this group that was way up here into left forearm P. So now when I grab left forearm, that piece will move with it. Okay? Now I'm going to do the same thing on this one. So I'm going to go to here. I'm going to grab all the bits. That's it, yep. I'm going to group it. I'm going to call it left bicep hydraulic bits. Nope, left hydraulic bicep bits. There we go. I'm going to control click the left bicep and then hit P, and then you can see it drop into that area. Here it is. Okay. All right, so now if I go to my left bicep, I move this, that moves. If I go to my left forearm and move that, that moves. Now I need to get these two things to work together. So this is the tricky part. I'm going to create two locators. So this will be the bicep locator. Oops, left bicep locator. And I'll duplicate it, and this will be the left forearm locator. And these are nothing objects, basically placeholders, things for us to use, kind of like a null for us to use to connect things to. So I'm going to move this one to this part right here. So I'm going to do the same little trick. I'm going to hold down V and snap that right there. I didn't hold down DV because I don't want to just move the pivot. I want to move that whole shape right there. And I'm going to slide this into the center of it. It's hard to see, but it's definitely like this is the center. You can see like this little crosshair right there amongst all those millions of wires. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Click this, oops, this. I'm going to hold down V for snapping, middle mouse button, click and drag, then spin around to this view. There we go. Hold down V and then snap this to the center of that. You are so close. Come on. There we go. All right. All right, so now these have to be parented to the correct thing. So left bicep will go to left bicep. Left forearm will go to left forearm. There we go. Cool. I just want to double check, make sure everything's moving. Yes, okay. So this is going to be a locking constraint. So it's basically going to lock the position of this is going to be locked to that. That's what that's going to do. And then the rotation of this is going to be locked to the direction of that. So basically they're going to point at each other, and then as one moves, it'll automatically adjust the direction that they're pointing at each other. Okay, that's the idea. So I'm going to take this, first, the locator. I'm going to shift click this arm, and then I'm going to go to rigging, go to constrain, go to parent, and I'm just going to leave this on translate, maintain offset. Okay, I'll do the same thing on the other side. Click the locator first, shift click the hydraulic part, constrain, parent, make sure it's just translate, and OK. So now what that does is if I now rotate, you'll see how the pieces are now going with it. Okay? Now, the reason that it doesn't look like it's working perfectly is because they don't have a direction. Right now, they're just kind of moving with it, but they're not actually like pointing at the other thing. So we need to get them to point at the other thing. So I'm going to go click this. Notice how this arrow right here is pointing directly there. So that's what I need to do. I'm going to click this locator, shift click this one, and I'm going to tell it this piece of geometry to point at that locator. That's what it's going to do. So I'm going to say constrain aim. We will forever get this incorrect. It doesn't matter. We're just going to hit add. That's not the right direction. So I'm going to hit Control A, go to the aim constraint, and I'm going to choose which aim vector is there. So I believe it's going to be Y, but we'll see. So I'm going to make aim vector 0 here, 1 there, 0 there. And that looks like it locked in. I don't want to have my up and my up Y and my aim being the same thing, so I'm just going to reset this to X. There we go. And so now let's see if that works. If I grab the forearm and I rotate it, it's aiming at it, right? Let's go to bicep. Yep, so that's working. It's pointing at the bicep joint. You can see that. So now let's do the same thing for the other side. I'm going to click on this locator, shift click that thing there, and go back to constrain, go back to parent. Nope, not parent. Go back to aim. And now we know that it's going to be Y, so I'll just type that in. So the aim vector is 1 in Y, and the up vector is there. And I hit add. And now if we grab that bicep and we move this, the whole thing moves. Excellent. Then we grab the forearm and we rotate it. Oh, it broke. All right, that's where we screwed up. What did we do wrong? Oh, that's what we did wrong. The pivot for this needs to be in the same spot as that locator. So the unfortunate part is I have to delete that. So I'm going to hit F here to find this. I'm going to go over here, delete the constraints. Once you've done this, it becomes a lot faster the second time around. So I just forgot to take the pivots for these and lock them to the locators. I'm going to isolate so it's a lot easier to select. I'm going to hold down D, hold down V, and then snap this back here to that locator. There we go. Do the same thing here. There we go. So now I can do this a lot quicker. I'm going to say this one, parent, and then this one, parent, and then this one, aim, and then, whoops, and that one, aim again. All right, now let's try this again. So we go to left bicep. It moves, yes. Left forearm. Oop, there we go. Okay, so now no matter where that arm is moving, it's automatically going to stay like locked into that. Obviously, there's a limit. I can only rotate this so far before that stick comes out of there. Okay, I just didn't have, obviously, in the real world, that bar is only so long inside your hydraulic device, tube. So it only goes so far. Same thing here, I can only go so far before that piece is actually like slamming into the other piece. Bless you. Okay, so now that those are set up, I would do the same thing on this side. Obviously, the more stuff you do, the longer it's going to take, but obviously the more better results you're going to get. That makes sense. Other stuff I may want to do, let's say this head, I may want to animate everything moving and rotating in here. So I'm going to grab all the pieces for this. I don't want the eyelash things or the light. I just want all those head pieces. The iris here, I need to select the group and then deselect all the iris stuff. So actually, let me do this manually. This, yes, and then iris. I believe that's everything. Yep, that should be everything inside there. Nope, I still think I have something else in there. Wait. Nope. No, I think that's good. That should be it. Yep, that's it. Okay. So I'm going to group all these, and this will be called I. I'm going to center pivot it, and I'm just going to see where that shows up at. I might have it luck enough where I can just take that and it'll rotate right from there, and it looks like it is. So I don't need to like modify it at all. It looks like it's rotating right where I would want it to rotate from. Cool. Okay, so bicep is there, eye is there, forearm is here. I don't need that perspective camera right now. Here's the glass, so that'll all be joined together. And then these parts here, I don't really do anything with. They're just like static pieces of geometry. They don't move. So I can grab all the static ones and group them together and center pivot it. And there they go. Okay. Now, same thing up here. I have some hinges. So I would have then just kind of moved these so that the hinges are in the right spots. And this, I don't know if I have an exact spot here. Whoops. Hit play. There we go. Yeah, so there's no exact spot for this one. So I'd have to do something else. I have to get into like joint work and stuff, and I don't really want to do that. If I create a locator, though, I can kind of cheat that. If I just scoot this up and slide this over. So I'm just kind of rotating this to a direction I think that it should be kind of planed out, the direction it's going to be rotating. That looks pretty good. Then I'm just going to grab the pieces here, here, there, and that, and then parent it to that. So now if I take this and rotate it, you can see how I can then rotate just that little flap right there. Cool. And then I have another little flap right here too, okay? So eventually everything needs to be in a group. So we have our main group, that's our character, and then we'd have all these subgroups of all the different parts of the character that we would then be able to move around. To set keyframes on stuff, I'm gonna grab a piece. So let's grab left bicep. I'm gonna go to the beginning here. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna go to 240 and I'm gonna set a couple keyframes along the way. I want to, let's say, raise this up. Oops. Actually, let's say I want to lower it down some. Okay, so I'm going to go here to rotate Z. I'm going to key it. I'll go up to, let's say, 60, and I'll lower this down. I'm not paying attention to the other arm yet. I'm just kind of like focusing on just that one piece. I think that's probably too far. That's good. There we go. And so now I have a keyframe here, keyframe there, and then I can go, let's say, to 60 here. I'm going to set a keyframe to rotate it forward. So that'll be Y. I'll keyframe that. Or maybe I'll go back with that one. Keyframe that. There we go. Now I'm going to go into the left forearm and do the same thing. So I'll set a keyframe on that. I'll go up to 60, and then I'll make this work. Oh, we're so close, right there. Just at the end of that too. That was a good, that was close. So now it looks like he's like extending his arm and then sliding it along. And the more stuff I have, the more keys I can add to it. For something that we're focusing on modeling, you don't want to have like a bunch of stuff animated. If anything, you just want it to be subtle. So if he had fingers, let's say I just have him kind of moving his fingers. Or in this case, I just have him kind of like lifting up one of his arms and like flexing his arm or something. I wouldn't want to go into like a crazy full-blown animation on the character because this is a modeling one. Just shows off some of the features as far as this thing and then that. And then the same thing for my iris. If I wanted to animate those iris parts, there's his eye. There's the iris. I need to grab all the iris bits, so I'm going to click on the iris. There you go. Isolate it, and then marquee it, and then unisolate it. And then I would figure out which direction these are rotating in. So it looks like rotate Y is the key. So then I would go to wherever I want that to happen. We will set a key on Y. I'll go up to, let's say, 100. And shrink that in. Key it again. Go up to, let's say, 120. Pop it open. Key it. Right? And then I hit play, and then I can see it slowly closing and then opening up a lot faster. I'll move that keyframe back a little bit. Move this one up a little bit. Shift marqueeing in here with your middle mouse or left mouse. It's a quick way to just grab stuff and move it around. Cinema, you can just grab the keys and move it. In Maya, you can't. Yeah, stuff like this, usually you have like this cool like little glitchy thing where it's like trying to focus. Key there, scoot up a little bit. Key there. That's cool. And then if we wanted to get a little fancier with it, I'd jump in the graph editor. And then this is actually not one curve, this is a curve for every single one of those pieces. But because I'm editing them all at the same time, it makes my life a lot easier. So I can just grab these. I'm going to click this, which is break, and that way I can grab these individually. Oops, come on. Break. There we go. And I'm just changing the speed of these so that it feels a bit faster. Don't do that. That's a bad thing. There we go. Something like that. And then like that. All right, so let's just see what that gives us. Let's go back to here. Right, so it's a little bit faster in some spots, it's slower in some spots. Cool. Okay, so any property in Maya can be animated. So if you had a light you want to animate, you could animate the intensity of a light going on and off, or clicking on, or whatever you want. You could animate, obviously, the camera moving, anything, you can just right click and key select it, and then it'll let you keyframe stuff. If you need to delete keyframes, so let's say that I grabbed his whole body here. Whoops. You get in there. His whole body there, and I set a keyframe on everything, or just that one thing, I can right click down here and just say delete, and that keyframe will go away. Or if I were to set a key here, go up this far, set a key there. If I want to change any of these, I can use these here to go right to the keyframe, and then update the value, and then reset the key. And it'll just overwrite it. Or I can shift, drag, and then delete, and now all the keyframes are gone. I can reset that back to 0. Okay, so nothing you have to do as far as animation, but I just want to show you some of the stuff, so in case you did want to add that to yours, you definitely could add it to yours. Okay. The idea is just make sure your pivots are in the right spot, and then you can just group things correctly, and then that makes your whole job a lot easier. It's only when you're getting into stuff like this where we have obviously a lot more stuff going on. And I don't know what that is. Why are you over there? You're keeping it a secret, apparently. I didn't know about that. I think it's part of this that I just didn't connect, so I think that just wants to be parented to that. Oops. And then there's that cap. Oh, that's from. So I'm just parenting these things to that arm. So I'm just grabbing the piece, shift-clicking the arm, and then hitting P. Yep. There we go. Cool. All right, questions on that? No? All right.